this video, we're going to review the different features of the Midnight Print Calculator. Now, once you're in a job and you have all your setups completed, you can go ahead and navigate to your department that has your print service in it. And when we click our service drop down, we can see we have services here with the action of print calculator. Now I can click on this service to add a new calculator, or I can click on the little launch icon to launch an existing calculator. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my service. It's going to launch a new calculator for me. And then in this calculator, we have our header section. We'll talk about that first. We can look at particular template groups or look at all templates. And then when we drop down our template name drop down, we can select a template. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and select this postcard template. And we can see that when this loads, it's a Heidelberg, so it's going to be an offset template. Now when this template loads, it's going to default everything that we had in our template and our press standards and paper standards. So all these numbers here, although came from our template, are now editable. So if you wanted to tweak something, if you wanted to go with a different spec or something changed while you were estimating the job, you can go ahead and change that here. Something to note in this press details screen, this ignore margins checkbox is really useful if the page you're printing on is 8.5 by 11 and you're saying that your printed piece is 8.5 by 11, but you have a margin or a gripper defined. Those things will cause problems because it's encroaching on your live area and the calculator will think it can't print that size. So by clicking ignore margins, it will ignore things like gripper and margin and allow you to fit that piece on the page. If we move into our color details, we can see, since we have two sides going on, we can select a predefined ink group, like we talked about setting up earlier, or you can go ahead and just ad hoc inks into this list as you see fit. You can also change their coverages and define whether they need a plate or not on the fly. In our paper details, the template loaded our paper, but if we wanted to change that paper, we could here. We could also go into the advanced paper search, and if we wanted to look for all our papers that had 8.5 by 11 size, we could look for that here. And we can see here, in this case, if we needed to cut down our parent sheet to our run sheets, our imposition would show that here. Likewise, if we go to our imposition tab, we can see that our print size with our bleed 9.25 by 6.25 will fit 4 up on this page. And we can do things like center our print. We can add some gap in between them, and our diagram will reflect this. If we wanted to force the grain match, we could by checking this checkbox. Our grain match is always on the length dimension, so 8.5 by 11 and 11 by 8.5 will reflect different grain directions. Now you can also click Dutch cut. This will allow the page to impose a separate row oriented different than the rest of the job. So in some cases that'll allow you to get more pieces up in a particular job. Additionally, here on the imposition and paper sections, you can select a cutter if you want, if you have one set up. You can also look at our additional services section here. We can see a few have been added through this template, and we have our different units that we could use. So we could multiply our unit price by, say, net impressions or quantity or run sheets. And then we can also decide whether these services get worked into our markup or not. If this template had volume pricing, it would display here. And likewise with our notes. So we can hit calculate, and we're going to see we get some results here. And if we go into run details, we're going to get a little bit more detailed explanation of some of those results. So if we go through them here, we can see our per plate cost, plates per set, total plates, net impressions, estimated time, so on and so forth. So we can also see our costs that we incurred on this job. And if we look on the right here, all our costs add up to, in this case, it's around $855. And we can define a markup, and then our total print is our print costs times our markup. And then in our case, we chose not to mark up our additional services. So those are going to get added after the print for a total price of $2,314. Now there's a couple settings in this screen that I want to point out. Price match. So if you wanted to override the price that you got here and just make it $2,000, let's say, you could type that in, and that would submit this calculator as $2,000, keeping all your costing as it is here. Additionally, if you wanted to lock the current pricing, you could, and what this does is allow you to lock the pricing that the customer is going to get, but it will also allow you to change the specs of the job so that you can create an accurate work order in case something changed but you don't want to change your pricing. Now in the header, we have this button called Make Multi-Part Job. So if we click on that, we can turn this single calculator into a multi-calculator setup. So this is really useful if we're doing something like making books or doing packages. So what we can do here, say this is our cover and our guts and our insert. And if we hit update tabs, we can see that we now have 3 tabs. So if we look at our cover, we can see we have that calculator here. If we look at our guts, we can see that this is now a blank calculator. So let's go ahead and grab a digital template. You can see our Biz Hub is selected here, and our press details are a little bit different because we're in a digital machine. And if we go to color details, we can see we can choose our click rates and modify those if we want to. And then if we go to our insert, we can go ahead and click another template there. And if we go back to our main tab, we're going to be able to see that we have 3 pieces here with particular cost, markup, and price. We can price match this whole multi-part calculator, and then we can also add additional services that belong to the pieces as a whole. So if we were going to create these separate pieces for a book, and then we wanted to add the bindery service onto the multi-part, we could. And when we calculated that here, we can see that those costs start getting added up here as well. Multi-part name can be changed. You can also change the pages for the multi-part and the quantity if you wanted to. And when we submit this, you can see our 3 pieces get submitted, and then any additional services we have that were associated with those jobs would also show in their appropriate departments. Now if we want to edit anything on this print calculator, keep in mind that outside of just changing the unit price for a particular line, we do need to actually launch the calculator. And we would launch the calculator from the main print service. And this will bring us back into either the single part calculator that we were on, or in this case, a multi-part calculator.